Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of From the District with State Senator Suzanne Weber. Uh, Joining me from her office in Salem.
Yeah,
Uh,
where I
we
am
have
every day.
where you are every day,
Yes.
have been every day for the last number of months. We have State Senator Suzanne Weber. Suzanne, how are you?
Well, I'm fine. I'm really staying busy because I had a lot of constituent issues that I've been dealing with. And of course, we have our committees. They are winding down now. We may be having just a few informationals. We're still having informationals and working on the education budget for Ways and Means. Hopefully, we'll be able to get more money into the education budget, seeing as how the revenue forecast came out so well or
Right.
good. Well, I can't remember well or good there, but anyway, it is going to possibly give us an opportunity to be able to fund at the level that we had hoped we would be, rather than the 9.9. We would go for the 10.3.
Very good.
And I think that, with all of the cuts and all of the issues that education is facing right now, with the fact that our kids are, below standard in their skills in reading and math, need to be able to provide the amount of support, and it needs to be monetary to be able to support literacy, support kids, support teachers. We've had some really interesting informationals in education. Also, we had one from Baker's that is looking at how they have restructured their salary schedule for teachers and what that can mean for encouraging the workforce. And I know it doesn't have all of the kinks worked out of it, because someone pointed out to me that there were Tillamook School District had an even better salary schedule that they are using right now. But it does give you hope that you can be taking care of some of these things. And I have gotten a lot of letters from school districts saying what they are going to lose if they only got the 9.9 budget.
This reminds me a lot of last go round where you were advocating for funding schools at a higher level than the majority party was. You fought tooth and nail to get more money in it. It just kind of blows my mind that we have some of the
well, we got
yeah. I'll let you say it.
We got to pass through the House, and then we got to pass through the Senate with an extra amount of money beyond what the governor's budget suggested. But when it got to the governor's desk, that was she vetoed that line item and took it back to her recommended budget, which it didn't fill the bill, so it put school districts even farther behind.
And I remember when you were first running and we heard how you were going to cut education, and it was just laughable to me. And we're seeing it today. You are trying to put more money into education, and the majority party and the leaders keep trying to drag it backwards.
Yeah.
It's really shocking to me and yet, unfortunately, some of the lobbyists for the professional unions out there continue to feed at the trough of the majority party, when it's actually you and your colleagues who are trying to put more money into education.
Yes, it's extremely important. It's extremely important that we continue to look at increased funding in higher education. We're 34th in the nation for, being a state that supports higher education. 34th.
Right.
What? Okay, so we've got people going to college, and if they're not in computer engineering or this, they're getting out of college with an immense amount of debt without an opportunity to be able to pay it back before they're 40 years old. I
Right.
mean, why? It's like buying another house.
So I
When
turned
you're
40
20
this year. I just turned 40, and I finished paying off my student loans about 11 months ago.
Yes.
I've been out of college for a little while. And yeah, it is it's absolutely, the system's broken.
Right.
The system's just broken. And um, getting more money to higher education, getting more money to community colleges, which provide a much more affordable higher education than you get in your four-year schools, and really make it affordable. And in your district, you're very fortunate to have a number of really affordable, really great community colleges. And I know you've worked really hard to support them as well.
They add so much to our economy. They support families. They support children. They keep the debt load down. They enhance our workforce. I mean, look at our nurses and everything that have come out of the community college and what that has done for our healthcare system.
Right.
We've got to continue to add additional support to them. I had a nice visit with Ross Tomlin. He was in my office last week.
And he's the president of Tillamook Bay Community College.
Yes, he is. And we had a nice conversation about the hope for additional funding, especially for community colleges and higher education.
Awesome.
Tell you what, when kids aren't seeing the return on the paychecks, when they're getting paid more money right out of school with a than what they would get if they went to school for 4 years, and what that can add to their life, they're not going to college. We have less and less kids that are able to afford that to be able to get into the workforce.
Right.
And we've got such opportunities, especially in the field of computers and chips, and we need to be able to have those engineers and those people, that workforce available for research and development, to be able to enhance that kind of economic growth.
Right. Well, Senator, you have been, despite what some may have been saying, you have been very, very busy, having many meetings with constituents and advocates. What have you been up to the last few weeks?
Well, let me tell you about today. I had a meeting with DEQ about the fish processing plants up in Astoria.
Right.
What they need to do to be able to continue, to get their permits and to be able to continue to operate underneath the permits that they have and permits going forward. And so we had a really great meeting with DEQ, and we learned a lot more. I was over in Representative Javity's office so that we could hear the same information at the same time, and a real feeling that DEQ really wants to work with these fish processors, and they are, and there have been agreements signed, and there are things in the works that are going forward. And one of the things that we've been very aware of is that we on the coast, especially, and being small towns, we don't have the municipal ability to be able to handle the effluence that comes out of the fish processing plants. In Washington and in California, they don't have a lot of these problems because their effluents from the fish processing plants are going through municipal systems. We don't have that. We have municipal systems that are sorely in need of upgrades, because for the last how many years we have not been able, because of financial constraints, to be able to pay attention to continually upgrading our sewer plants so that we could be in a position where we could help out the fish processors.
Right. And
So
that's such a huge industry for your district. It is just enormous.
it is, and we need to be working on that. And so we had a really great meeting. And then I also had a meeting with ODOT today because I've been working extremely hard with the governor and her staff to be able to provide funds for the Sunset Empire Transportation District, who found themselves in some dire financial straits. And today they assured me that, they are putting the final blessing on a $500,000 bridge loan for them. And they have also dedicated a lot of ODOT staff to be able to help to figure out what exactly happened. And what's going to be needed is ODOT is going to have to do an audit. But, all of the paperwork needs to be in place in order to do the audit. And so they have people that are working to get that accomplished. And, there are some lines that are up and running right now, but they'll need additional money to be able to get the rest of it up and running because, they had some debt that they also needed to resolve in this whole issue. But I see that ODOT is being a real they're playing well with others.
That's good. That's good to hear. And we've gotten some contacts. Your staff has gotten some contacts from folks really wanting to know what happened. And I think it's important that folks know that we're going to find out. Step one was to get the wheels in the bus going round and round again.
Right.
So
to
those
not
people
make any empty threats or empty decisions about what might have happened, because nobody really knows at this point in time, where things started to go wrong and how it all happened.
Something definitely went afoul. I mean, you don't just run out of money and just realize it 2 weeks before or 5 days beforehand.
Right.
Something happened, but we don't know what it is. We don't know who is at fault, but certainly do know that will be found out, and the people who were the reason for it will be held accountable.
Yeah, and they have a new executive director, and they have a very dedicated staff that is working very hard to figure this all out.
Right.
And, they've got a board now that knows all of the pitfalls that they have in front of them, and they're working very hard also to make sure that this will be a very viable transportation district in the end.
Excellent. Well, you have been meeting with a lot of folks. But let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
You have been part of what has been called, I think, erroneously, a walkout. You clearly haven't
anything.
You have been attending all of your committee meetings. You have been attending all of your daily constituent meetings. You have been working with agencies to help constituents get things done. The only thing you have not been attending are the floor sessions.
Exactly. And I have to tell you, there were some committee meetings that I couldn't attend because I had oral surgery, and that was in Tillamook, and the meetings I was allowed to join virtually, and so I couldn't be a part of those meetings.
I remember being told that you had made that up to try to get an excuse. You sent me pictures.
I still have what, you want to send them the pictures?
No, I don't want to see those pictures again. I wish I had not seen those pictures to begin with. They were not pretty.
And I've also got a couple more stitches that are still coming out. So
so that was quite real. The timing was coincidental, but you still very much supported what your colleagues were doing. And let's talk a little bit about why. you have potentially made a giant sacrifice. You and the Republican and independent senators. This is not just Republicans. This is also the independent party senators, of which there are two.
Yes.
So this is a bipartisan walk-in, if you will, I suppose. But you could possibly have barred yourself from ever running for re-election because of Measure 113. We'll talk about a little bit about Measure 113 in a moment, but would just like to get your initial reaction. You haven't talked about this much because, quite frankly, you've been doing your job. But talk a little bit about what this means to you, about why you made such a sacrifice, and what you sacrificed for.
Well, one thing I sacrificed this for was I don't think that 113 is necessarily, even though 63% of the population voted for it. I don't think it's well written. So I think that there's an issue around the whole measure. Okay.
Sure. Let's make sure people know what we're talking about here. Measure 113 was a bill that was passed, a constitutional amendment that was passed.
It was, yeah.
Yep, in 2022, and this would make it so that any legislator who had more than 10 unexcused absences would not be able to run for re-election. There are some people who are saying that the law itself, the constitutional amendment, is not constitutional under the federal constitution. But I talked to a number of people about this who said they voted for it, but had no idea really what they were voting for.
Exactly. And you look at the initiatives that have come forward in this state in the last 5, 6, 7 years. Look at 110.
Yeah.
They are not
great example.
Well written. The unintended consequences of these initiatives are not fully explored before they're put on the ballot. I get really upset when I think about, we've been sold a bill of goods on a lot of things, and I am totally, Measure 110 is probably the most egregious offense.
Right.
And I just can't, but 113, 113 is one of those things where it took all of the potential power away from the minority party. Here I am getting my words, my tongue tangled up. But it went deeper than that, because we need to stand up for something. And that there was a law found in the books that determined the readability of the summary of each of the bills.
Right.
It was called the Flesch reading scale, and that the readability of the summary was supposed to be at an 8th grade level. Most of the summaries, now I'm being very clear on this because it's not the bills themselves, it's the summaries on the bill, are written at probably a college level. And so when people read the summaries to find out what the bill is about, they are not getting an adequate description of what is going to be voted on.
Right. And I think one of the big bills that is probably the biggest fight for you right now is House Bill 2002.
Yes.
And that is very clear that even some of the sponsors of that bill don't know what's in it. We've talked about this before. There was an audible gasp from one of the bill sponsors when they were told what was in it.
Yes. Yeah, and there are still people that don't understand all of the ramifications that those words could mean for our society, for our parents, and for our children.
Right.
Because they are equating this bill with abortion bills throughout the state, and it does not equate. Oregon has probably the most liberal abortion bills in the country. None of those bills at this point in time are threatened by
By
2000.
anything.
Well, nothing is threatening them at this point in time.
Right.
And so I find it very frustrating because the only thing I'm doing is denying a quorum on the floor. I am doing all of my other work. I have not left the state. I have not left my constituents. I am still working on constituent issues on a regular basis.
Right. I think there is an equation to pass what were actually walkouts, where senators and or representatives would actually leave the state
They
because
did.
the governor threatened to send the state patrol after them, and so they left the state. That is not what's happened here. And I'm not talking about just Republicans. Democrats have done it too. They did it to try to stop a bill, and they were led by then Senate Minority Leader Kate Brown.
Yeah.
This is not new. This is denying quorum is has been a tool of minority parties since the founding of quorum rules.
Yes. And the other thing is, when we started the session, it was all feel good talk about how we were going to work on a bipartisan level to be able to pass bills together that would benefit the citizens of Oregon. That didn't turn out that way.
Right.
The agenda that we had as a Republican Party was completely it was gone. They didn't honor any of it. And then when we tried to pull some of those bills back to the floor, they voted them all down.
These were not controversial bills either.
They were not controversial bills. They were bills that were going to, be housing bills and bills to be able to feed people.
Right.
And they were not acknowledged even. And so the frustration of having this constantly in front of you, that that nothing, even if it's the best thing you ever wanted to do and it's going to help the most people ever, is not going to get off of the floor. It's really sad.
Right. So this bill, HB 2002, we're seeing some of your Democratic colleagues calling this protecting reproductive health. And what this does, there's three things that I think are objectionable to you, to the point that you're willing to give up your political career for these things. One, it would make it so that one could have an abortion, a child could have an abortion without their parents even being told. Not just not consenting, parents consenting, but without them being told. Right now, if you're 15 years or older, you can get a woman can get an abortion. And I'm talking about calling a woman is a strong word for a 15-year-old.
Yes.
The girl.
Well,
but if you're 12, 13, or 14, a parent needs to be at least told about it. And some of the things we've gotten by is, of course they need to have an abortion because they've clearly been raped because they're 12 years old and pregnant. That's not the point.
That's not the point.
The point is that a parent should know about it. And then we get back, well, what if the parent's abusive and it's going to hurt and it's going to hurt the child? There's maybe, if you wanted to talk about some sort of judicial bypass system, maybe we could have talked about that, but you didn't do that. You took the most extreme, ridiculous anti-parent law and tried to shove it down the throats of Oregon. The other one is it's the same thing with sex changes. This would allow a 10, 11, 12-year-old child to go have a sex change without their parent even knowing about it. again, this is not saying you can't do it ever.
Right.
It's saying that you're saying parents should just be told.
Right.
This is not about saying you can't have an
No.
abortion and you can't have a sex change. That's not what this is about. This is not about any of that. It's about a parent's right to have involvement in their child's medical decisions. And if you can't stand up for that, what? Even if you disagree, folks that disagree with the senator's doing, disagree with her, at least understand and respect that she's standing up and possibly giving up her political career, a job she really likes, because this is just too far. This is just too far.
I did not take my oath to uphold the Constitution lightly, and I feel that I would be really remiss if I were to support something of this caliber.
Right.
I mean, one of the senators said, he said, so I die and I go to heaven and I'm there at the gate and I've got St. Peter, and he says, did you do everything you could to protect our children? And if you cave in something like this, you haven't done all that you could to protect our children.
Right. And another thing I would say to the majority party is, look, you just lit your agenda on fire for 2 years, at least. Because now, if you really believe 113 is constitutional on the federal level, now you've got a bunch of senators who can't run for re-election, and they could blow up everything you do. So congratulations.
Yeah. Amazing, isn't it? Now, I'm going to say that we have had opportunities to talk with the governor.
Right.
The governor doesn't really get involved in these sorts of things to this point. She's been very helpful to me especially with the Sunset Empire Transportation District and being able to help those folks out. And I really appreciate that. I had a conversation with her last week on, what'll it take to get you back? And I told her exactly how I felt. And that was a good conversation. We met with her this morning. And our leader, we were all present, but the leader and she had a really good conversation. And then I believe there's going to be another meeting with her at 4:30 this afternoon. Right. And so, I see that the governor is willing to be able to do what she can to encourage compromise, to encourage the sides to get together and talk. Not that they haven't been talking, because they have.
Right.
But there just has been no compromise.
It's really unfortunate that I have seen, and it's really coming from activists. There are activist organizations who are spreading misinformation, saying that you've walked away, that you're not doing your job. And what that is people who are trying to get their way, to trying to scare you to come to the floor. When I will say, if you take a look at the correspondence you've received, and I talk with your chief of staff pretty regularly, you have gotten about 6 times as many correspondents supporting you than you have opposing you. So it's very clear that people of Oregon are who are at least supportive of what you're doing, if they're aware of it. Because the joke is 10% of the people support you, 10% oppose you, and 80% don't even realize the legislature's in session. But I think those who do have been very, very supportive of you. And I think it's really, when looking at 113, the public employee unions, who were the ones who did this, who brought this on,
yes,
they could have done something a lot easier. They could have changed the quorum rules and made it so that, like in most states, all you need is a majority plus one, 50% plus one of the members in the body to have a quorum.
Right.
Oregon's not that way. You have to
Not
have
that-
2/3. They could
Two-thirds.
have just changed that, and this wouldn't have happened. But what the public employee unions did is what they created, and the Oregonian did a great editorial on this. They created a system that was punitive, that was political, and designed to humiliate you. That's what it was. It wasn't trying to create a system that was going to be to encourage you to come back to work. It was designed to be punitive and humiliating. They could have done it the easy way and just changed the quorum, but they didn't because they wanted to embarrass you. And this is biting them in their butt. And I don't feel too bad about it.
Yeah.
So you're going to continue to do your job.
Well, yes, I am.
As you have been.
I'm going to be here every day to do my job.
Exactly.
I have work to do here.
And you're going to continue to do your job at least for the next 3 years, 3.5 years of your term. What happens after that will depend on what happens with Measure 113, and of course, what your personal decisions about what you want to do with your life going forward are. But I think everybody can rest assured that if you hear anything about Suzanne Weber walking out on her constituent, it is a political, bald-faced lie.
Anybody who says that does not know me, does not know my work ethic, and does not know what I'm committed to, nor the common sense of the governor has said she's not going to go search out all of these people. She's not sending the police to get us. So we have no threat against us. We can come to work every day and we can do the good things that we do every day.
I really have to give the governor credit, and I never thought I would say this, but having worked with you when you were in the House and when she was Speaker, it was a pretty terrible relationship. But I have to say I've been impressed with the way that she's handled this situation. I've been impressed with how she's helped in the Sunset Empire Transit District situation. She has been, I disagree with her on a ton of policies, but have been really impressed with how she's handled herself as governor over the time of her term. I really have been appreciative of that. And I know you've been appreciative of her help as well.
Yes, I have been.
So, Senator, anything else you want to say? What do you got going on this week?
Well,
this coming week. You got a lot going on.
I have a lot going on. Every day. I've got my committee in the morning at 8 o'clock, and then I go from there. I go and answer my emails, read my emails, and then I get prepared for my afternoon committee, which has basically come to an end because we don't have any more bills. We do have some that are going to be coming over from the House soon, but I have appointments every 15 minutes all afternoon. I have caucus, I have forums, I have people to meet with and talk about issues that are impacting our district.
Right. Believe it or not, folks, the time on the floor is the vast minority of time that a senator spends during their day. The vast majority of time is in committees, meeting with constituents, meeting with advocates, meeting with advocacy groups, organizations, talking to them about their priorities. That's a huge part of the day. Time on the floor is really a small amount of time.
And the other thing is, people are all worried about the budget bills. We will be back to pass the budget bills.
You have to be. And one of the things you did early on was you passed an interim budget that does fund the Oregon state government through, I believe, September. So in theory, we could wait this whole thing out to the end of the constitutional sine die, which I believe is June 25th. Then that you are constitutionally required to be done by that day. The governor could then call a special session for the sole purpose of the budget.
Yes.
And then you could pass the budget and go home.
Yes.
That So anybody that's worried about how are we going to get these funding things done, and they saying, oh, you're denying critical funds for this, and this. No, she's not. You're going to pass a budget. You're constitutionally required to pass a budget. You're going to pass
Yes.
a budget. The
Yes.
end. And whether it's by June 25th or it's by July 25th, it will happen.
Yes.
So I guess my point to everyone is don't fall for the activist lies. The senator is doing her job. And sometimes doing her job means stopping bad bills.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
using every parliamentary trick in the book to stop bad bills. That's what she's doing. In fact, the ones that she's fighting are so bad that she's willing to give up her political career to stop them.
And some of those bills were built under a bushel basket. You know what I mean?
Right.
A committee that gets together and puts this crafts this and then springs it on the group.
All of a sudden there's an amendment that no one heard of or talked about, but it shows up.
Yeah. And and I have to say that there was a bill that I had my name on that became a gut and stuff. And so I supported the initial concept.
Right.
But do I support what they have built? Probably not.
So one thing I do want to touch on before we end is the situation around former Secretary of State Shemia Fagan. And there seems to be a lot of stuff coming from that. And quite frankly, I would say, folks, if you want to be upset about something, go take a look.
To be upset about.
Go take a look at what's going on with the pot industry, the corruption with the pot industry with former Secretary of State Shemia Fagan, with the Democratic Party of Oregon, fines that have gotten levied heavily on the Democratic Party, but magically disappeared, and all of a sudden, no, we're not going to do any criminal penalties because that's just too much. I promise you, if this was the Republican Party of Oregon, the Oregon Republican Party, people would be in jail.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It is a travesty.
Right.
And then to have the person who is involved in the pot industry advising on the audit.
That would be like you being your own the advisor to the IRS who's auditing you.
Yes. Now, wouldn't that go over big? Yes.
It would work for me if it's me.
And taking advice from someone who owes hundreds of thousands of dollars in back taxes to the very state that they're giving money to the political candidates. Come on.
Right. Including the Senate president, who took literally a bag of cash. I don't know if it was a pillowcase that had dollar signs on it. I mean, that would just probably fit.
Well, it was more than a shoebox.
Oh, it was a shoebox.
No, I said it was more than a shoebox.
Oh, well, yes, it was. You can get, what was it, 10 grand?
Yeah.
To him? I don't remember. I don't
remember exactly
it was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it was legal, but it doesn't make it right.
Yeah. A bill has been crafted since that time to limit it to $100 in cash.
Right. And that's probably a smart thing anyway. I remember when we were running your campaign, when people handed us cash, it just made my stomach turn. Because and it happens. You're at a fundraiser, you take out a 20 out of your wallet and you hand it, and that's one thing, right? It's kind of a pain, but you try not to do it. But stacks of cash from an organization that deals only in cash, that has back taxes and is being audited by the Secretary of State.
And one of its subsidiaries called Black Market.
Yeah. So, folks, if you want to be mad about something, I'd recommend that. Do follow that. A big props to Willamette Week. Did just top-notch journalism there. It was really impressive. But we will see soon the governor the governor will appoint a new Secretary of State.
Yeah, he will.
We will. This I may take all my words about her back, depending on who that is.
Well, she says she's being very thoughtful about it.
I hope that's true, and I don't have any reason to think it's not. But we really need some. We really need some trust to be restored to that office, and so it's my hope that she will pick somebody who is not a former Democratic Party of Oregon official, someone who is not tied to her campaign in some way as some sort of thank you. I hope she'll do that. That person will have to be confirmed by the Senate. So that may complicate some things, but you may end up in another special session to confirm the Secretary of State. But right now, it's being the Secretary of State's office is being managed by Cheryl Myers, who's a long time bureaucrat, which is a good thing sometimes. So hopefully that no reason she can't continue to do that job. And perhaps, that may be somebody to consider. Maybe, maybe not. We'll find out.
Yes, we will.
Senator, anything else that you want to say as we're wrapping up?
No, I just want to tell the people who have written to me and supported me how much that means to me. The fact that you have taken the time to find out exactly what the facts are means a lot. And the fact that you have reached out to me, that means even more. I appreciate it because sometimes it's a real downer when people are cussing at you for doing something that you did not do, and then they won't sign their name to it. So.
Yeah. Remember, folks, there are real people on the other side of your keyboard. So if you're upset, and that's fine, by all means, if you're upset and don't agree with what the senator is doing, and if you've expressed that in respectful terms, well, thank you. Appreciate that. Disagree with you, but appreciate that you're taking the time. But when you're calling names, and remember, there are staff and Senator Weber who they're real human beings. And I say this to both sides. If you're a Republican and you're writing and you're angry at a Democrat, remember that there's real people on the other side.
Did I tell you what the ALCU did? They sent all of the pink slips
that was
to
cute.
the Republican office. But inside of some of those pink slips were some very encouraging things. But they also, when the people had gotten to their 10 days, they sent a birthday cake and balloons for your retirement party.
Hey, we got cake.
No, they sent a birthday cake, not a birthday cake, a retirement cake to the Senate Republican office with balloons, telling us to enjoy our retirement.
Well, if that happens, let's all remind that will be 3.5 years from now.
Yeah,
for Senator Weber.
I had to just smile when I was told this because obviously they really don't understand what it is we were doing or what 113 actually said.
Well, and I think with the ACLU, they understand perfectly well what you're doing. They just don't care. They want to make a political point. They're activists, so they want to make a political point. And unfortunately, they rile up some of their members, supporters, by just flat out lying to them.
Lie.
And that's that's unfortunately what we see from them, and that just shows their true colors as people, which is unfortunate. But that's not going to stop you from doing what you think is right.
Right.
So,
thank you.
Thank you. I think it was a good conversation. We'll get back on track of doing these now that we had some insanity. I had some travel. In fact, as I clearly am not in my normal place. So we're back on track, and looking forward to talking with you again next week, Senator.
Thank you very much.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.